Good day, everyone, and welcome to today's webcast. Just a reminder, this call is being recorded. And now to begin the program, I'd like to introduce Chris Flack. Chris?
Hey, thank you so much, and welcome everybody in our audience to today's webcast, Ransomware, coming soon to a server near you. Brought to you by Redmond Channel Partner and sponsored by Infrascale. I'm Chris Flack, and I'm here to be your host for today's event, so thank you all for joining today's presentation. Now, just a few quick things before we begin today's presentation and introduce our speakers and presenters and get all the fun things started and out of the way. Just a few quick reminders. So first things first is we are recording today's webcast for future viewing and listening purposes, and we'll send you a link within 24 to 48 hours after today's webcast where you can view the replay. Please feel free to share that link with coworkers, colleagues, friends, anybody who may be interested on today's topic. We would appreciate that. You could also actually share the webcast right now with somebody who may be interested by using the little paper airplane icon in the bottom of your dock down there. It's called Refer a Colleague. You could send them a link to the console. They could sign up, join you here in the console. You guys could listen to the webcast together and have lots of fun during the show. So please feel free to do that right now. If you want to do that, that'd be great. We are also going to have a Q&A session at the end of today's webcast. However, here's a caveat. If you use the Q&A widget today, the person who has the best questions, the most on-topic questions, even if you just have one question and it's really great, you may be eligible to win one of the following prizes. So, if you have a question during today's program, feel free to enter it at any time using the Q&A box on your left. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can at the end of today's show. And if your question goes unanswered, that does not disqualify you from getting your chance to win one of these prizes. We'll try to squeeze in as many questions as we can at the end of the show today. So keep your eye on the Q&A box. Feel free to enter them at any time. We'd appreciate that. Joining us for today's webcast, we have a really great presenter. His name is Chris Sturbins. He is Infrascale's channel chief. He's a seasoned sales and business development executive with more than 25 years of experience in information and communications technology. He is well known in the channel community for his leadership and expertise with managed service providers and resellers. So welcome me and joining Chris in a little bit here. We are going to do a brief little run-through of the agenda for today's webcast, and then we have a poll question for you. So really briefly with today's agenda, Chris is going to go over ransomware targeting, specifically with the server. You're going to talk a little about recovery, cloud versus DRaaS. He's also going to talk about how to become a ransomware hero, which is, I'm sure, all you want to be. And then we're going to have a question and answer session where you can win one of those prizes at the end of today's call, where you could actually ask Chris any question that you wanted to pertaining to today's webcast or anything that Infrascale has to offer and that Chris could answer. So the first poll question in today's webcast that we wanted to get from everybody in the audience, we wanted to see where everybody was at. So the first poll question we have for everybody is how many of you have had one or more clients infected by malware? So I'll give everybody a couple seconds to answer this question here. In the meantime, I will bring Chris on. It's the Chris and Chris show today. I keep on forgetting that your name is Chris. I keep slipping and thinking it's mine. So I'll welcome Chris on. So Chris, what do you see typically when you ask people that you work with and your clients? Do you see them overwhelmingly saying, yes, we've had one or more of our clients infected by malware? I think it's something that everyone pretty much faces, right?
Absolutely. So hi, Chris. Thank you. So I meet with groups of MSPs and resellers quite frequently, and just recently ran a peer group of MSPs in Orlando just a few weeks ago. And I always ask this question when I get a group of them together is like, how many of you have had at least one customer affected in this calendar year? And I had a group of 15 MSPs in the room, and 80% of them had at least one customer that had fallen prey to a malware attack this year.
Well, you know what? It's funny you say 80% because that's literally almost what we have as the results right here for this poll. 77% of our audience responded saying yes, they've had one or more of their clients affected by malware, and the other 22% saying they have not, and 0% saying that they know nobody who wasn't even affected. So thank you so much, everybody in the audience, for your answers. But yeah, you were right on the ball there, Chris. 80% was the pretty much answer. All right, so thank you all for participating in that poll. We have a couple more coming up in today's presentation, so feel free to participate with them. I'll come back on and ask everybody the questions. But Chris, I will let you take it away and get started with ransomware and targeting the server.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So welcome, everybody. Glad you could join us. It's a really interesting topic. Ransomware has been around for a while, and it's certainly in the news quite frequently, and we're actually going to look at some recent headlines. But the thing that's most interesting about this is that it's an evolving threat, and the thing we're going to chat about today is how it has started to expand in scope and moved from just a typical individual on a laptop browses the wrong website or opens an attachment. It's now starting to infect networks, servers, and even getting out into Cloudflare environments and going from one company to another. One of the most interesting ones, and I was just reading about this, is I live in the Bay Area of California, and the San Francisco Municipal Transit Board got affected by malware, and their computer systems were down for more than 12 hours, and they wound up actually paying several bitcoins to get their community system back online. So this isn't just happened to individuals who make bad decisions on their browsers now. It's starting to affect larger and larger organizations, and let's take a look at what's driving that. So 3 big trends that are going on. The biggest one, or the first one I should say, is the phishing. Phishing attacks, the crafty looking emails to lure you into hitting a link or opening an attachment. That's been around for quite a while, but the quality of these phishing emails seems to be improving all the time. 2 of the ones that I think seem to be the most effective and are certainly very impressive, and you could see how people could fall prey to them. I would say 2 of my favorites, but 2 that jump to mind. The Amazon Prime is a super popular service, and in fact, that's another question I told people in a room. How many people in this room have Amazon Prime? Like 95% of the people raise their hand to that. So you're constantly receiving, shipping notices and updates from Amazon, and that's something that you don't even think twice about typically. You'll get that email from Amazon, oh, hey, shipping update, let's see what's going on with that order that I placed. And these are phishing emails, and you open that link, and bam, you've got the malware. The other one that is actually pretty crafty is if you're in a business network environment and you've got a scanner or a printer, a lot of times you'll receive that email notification that you've got a scanned document or a print job is completed, and they are mocking those extremely well also, and you'll see an email, and if they happen to get the right printer model or whatnot, you won't even think twice. You open that attachment, bam, and you're hit. There are hundreds of other variations. Those are 2 that have been super effective for the bad guys, and like I said, they're getting more sophisticated and more crafty, more subtle. The other thing that's changing, again, is this shift from the focus on individual consumers and really starting to now go after businesses. They've got more money. They've also got more at stake when their data gets tangled up in a malware environment. There's a couple mentions here. There's one about the Hollywood Presbyterian Medical Center. They want to pay $17,000 in bitcoins over to their ransomware people. And bitcoins is another trend that is actually driving the success of ransomware, the ability for people now to anonymously receive money. And it gives the criminals a whole lot of comfort that they can get in this business, make money at it, and never get caught. And then the third thing that we're seeing, and again, this is the evolution that we were talking about a second ago, it's not just the workstation. It's now designed to get into and exploit networks once it gets onto one of the endpoint devices and then go up and sideways from there. So 3 different trends. All of these things are bad, and it's one of the reasons that we're seeing more and more the successful attacks happening out in the community. Now, this is an even more alarming trend. If you decide that you want to get into the ransomware business, you can go online and actually buy a kit. Ransomware as a service is kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke that we've made about it, but for $4.99, they'll give you everything you need to go become a ransomware criminal. So I'm not advising that you go do this. My point being, there are very easy ways for people to get into the business, and we're seeing more and more people try it. So this is kind of alarming. The first time I saw this, I was pretty amazed, but it's out there. So let's talk about ransomware and how it actually gets in and can affect the network. So I won't read everything here, but it all starts, again, with that phishing email, and the individual falls for it, whatever that offer is, the link to open that attachment. Once at that point, now, rather than necessarily lock up all the files on that individual's laptop, it actually runs code that starts to send it out and explore the network that workstation is attached to. At that point, it can start to go through and encrypt files on the server or multiple servers. And then as it continues, it gets to a certain point, and then it pops up with the ransomware notice. You are now screwed, your data is all locked up kind of thing. While this is going on, it's continuing to explore the whole network and looking for other servers and workstations that it can infect. And so what began as a single exploit of a workstation can actually get into and take over an entire network. And so this, again, is a whole new level of danger that we're seeing from malware today. Okay, there's a lot that's going to go on in this slide, but this really kind of walks through the individual steps in an animated fashion, and I'll just kind of start walking through. So again, we see our skull and crossbones. This is the malware. Our end user has unfortunately opened that email, and the malware at this point starts to go out and explore, again, servers on the network, critical applications, finds other users, and in many cases even goes for the admin accounts. And all of these things can be infected if they don't have the proper protections in place. Now, another level of evolution of malware, it's starting to go into the cloud. Individuals that have applications like Box and Dropbox or other sorts of file sync or file share environments can actually be saving malware-infected files and documents up to the share without even realizing that it's going on. And then once it gets there, things can start to get pretty interesting, because at that point it can actually go across and get into other businesses. So depending on exactly what sort of file sync and share product you're using, you could actually get infected by another company, which is pretty incredible. And this is what you wind up getting to at this point. And when you see this, you are in deep, deep trouble. So we're going to take a look at now about what are your possible responses. But before we dig into that, here are just some recent headlines. I mentioned the attack on San Francisco Muni Transit a little bit ago. This is happening to not just companies, but also government agencies. It's taking over databases. It's crippling key applications. It's pretty amazing, and you see these headlines in the news almost every day. So this is going on all the time, and these are just the ones that are succeeded. We know that there's actually many more attacks that are happening that never make it into the news. Okay, so there are two different approaches or styles of data protection that you can use to kind of combat the effects of malware. Ransomware in your environment. So, and we're going to cover the differences between traditional backup, and then we'll talk about disaster recovery as a service, which is really more about business continuity or uptime. So let's go back to the company. They've hit that email. They've been exploited. The ransomware has locked up their machines. You know, at this point, you've basically got two choices if you want to get your data back. One is pay the ransom, which hopefully you won't have to do, or you can restore your systems. And so we're going to talk about two different ways that you can go about that process and kind of compare and contrast those. And so the big difference between traditional backup, which is at the top, and it's a timeline that kind of runs left to right, and disaster recovery as a service on the bottom, really is about time to recovery, time to get your systems up and running, time to get access to your data and get your business back online. With traditional backup, you've been infected, you're now having an issue, you've got to wipe the machine and then take a copy of the backup and load it all back onto the servers, the workstations, get them all booted and syncing properly, and then you can back up and running. That process, depending on what you use to back up your data, can take anything from hours to even days. We've seen, especially in some of these government agencies, it could take them a couple of days to get their stuff sorted and rolling again. Now, the concept of disaster recovery is the idea where you can take a copy of that data, whether it's local on an appliance or it's in the cloud, and you can actually virtualize an instance of the infected server or workstation and be up and running literally in minutes. And the time that it takes to get up and running is just how long does it take to boot that server image or boot that workstation image. And so there's a giant difference in terms of downtime between backup and disaster recovery. One of the many reasons that businesses are still stuck in the backup world has been the cost that it would take to have that sort of high-quality business continuity solution. Well, with technologies of today and the cloud, the price is coming way down and becoming affordable for businesses of all sizes. So we just talked through some of these things a little bit. Really what it talks about, again, is how do you reduce downtime? And really the difference is taking static copies of backup, loading them, rebooting, reconnecting stuff to the network, and again, hours or days. It's even worse for database environments. If you've got an Exchange cluster or MySQL cluster, you've got to do it for every one of those servers and then sync them together before you can light it up on the network again. If you've got disaster recovery as a service, you can literally boot those images, again, locally on the appliance or in the cloud, have that up again in minutes, and the business impact is minimized. So when you start to assess what sorts of backup or disaster recovery solutions would be good in terms of specifically addressing, ransomware attacks, these are some of the key things. And again, I won't read all these bullets to you, but these are the kinds of things that you want to make sure your backup solution has. And if you don't have some of these addressed today, you're exposed. And what that does is it basically expands the amount of time it will take for you to recover if you get attacked and fall for the ransomware. Anomaly detection is a great thing. It flags unusual behavior, so you know you've started to have a problem. It gives you something to go investigate. Unlimited versioning is important because when you do get a successful ransomware attack, you need to roll that system back to the last point in time before the infection happened. And if you've got limited versioning and a lot of backup solutions only keep, say, the last 30 days or some finite period, and many of these malware attacks are pretty clever in terms of their slow approach, where they'll go in, spread through the entire system, and not become apparent that you've been infected until like more than 30 days have passed. And if you can't roll back to that last point before you were infected, you're kind of hosed. So unlimited versioning or the ability for you to set the versioning that you've got on your backups is really critical. Endpoint protection, we'll take a look at this as well in a little bit, but in many businesses, backup has historically been focused on protecting the servers and those mission-critical business applications, but in many cases, the individual users' workstations, especially mobile devices like laptops and tablets and smartphones, are not protected. And, as we've discussed, this is frequently the point of entry for these ransomware attacks. Those are the devices most likely to get hit. And they're also most likely to not be protected. So that's kind of a bad combination. Multiple styles of backup, file and folder versus a complete image. Bare metal backup options would allow you to wipe an infected machine and then load a complete image on there to recover everything at once. If you've only got file and folder, you still have all your data, but again, the time to recovery is much longer if you have to restore these things, one bit at a time. We talked granular recovery points really talks to unlimited versioning. Again, being able to go back far and go back to a specific moment and capture the last time that your data was clean and load that to minimize your loss of data. Those two things are related that way. And finally, multi-factor authentication. This is a layer of protection that can keep that ransomware from affecting your backups. Because these things are all connected on the same network, some versions of ransomware are actually attacking people's backups and corrupting those as well, which is a major problem. Okay, so to contrast, again, the big difference between backup and disaster recovery as a solution really is about the ability to do failover, to take an image of a server, a database, whether it's a physical server, virtual server, workstations, take an image of that and light that up in a virtual fashion, whether it's locally on an appliance or in the cloud, and again, have that thing light up and take over the role of the infected server or workstation in the network and pick up that workload. If you can get it, not every disaster recovery solution offers it, but a guaranteed SLA for recovery would be optimal, and as small a window as possible. So 15 minutes or less is a window that most businesses can tolerate without too much pain. But make sure that your disaster recovery solution that you're selecting offers a guaranteed SLA for recovery. Many of them do not. The ability to protect the mixed environment. Most businesses today are not just Windows servers. We have a mix of many companies between physical servers running Windows or Unix or Linux, as well as virtualized servers running Hyper-V and VMware. You want to make sure that your DRaaS solution can handle both physical and virtual operating systems. Orchestration is the ability to light up several different servers or applications in the right sequence to get an entire site up and running. And so the question there is, do you need to do all this stuff manually, one server at a time? Or with orchestration, can you push one button, have them go off in the proper sequence, run the scripts and all those sorts of things to get them all up and running? So that's another great question for your DRaaS provider is, what sorts of orchestration do you provide, if any? Unlimited testing is another one. Many of the cloud-based DRaaS solutions actually limit the amount of time that you can run stuff in the cloud, limit the amount of tests that you can run. In many cases, you have to pay a fee every time you light up or do testing in the cloud. So you want to definitely understand the cost model of, if I want to run a disaster recovery test, or we've actually had a disaster and I'm going to run this stuff in the cloud for a couple of days, how much is that going to cost, and is it extra or is it included? Great questions to ask. Self-service declaration basically means that you, the admin or partner that's running the system, can go in and light up the virtualized image without having to contact the vendor. Some of the DRaaS offerings, you basically have to pick up the phone, talk to the vendor, and then they will light up that virtual instance. So do you have the ability to go in through some sort of console or interface and do it yourself, or do you need to contact the vendor to get the thing going? If you have to contact the vendor, once again, you're adding to the amount of time before you get recovery and back up and running. And then finally, how is the data treated? Is the data that is on your servers and being backed up to an appliance or backed up to the cloud, is this data encrypted, or is it out in the open, both in transit to the cloud or across the network to the appliance, and when the data is at rest in the data centers in the cloud and on the appliance? Is that stuff encrypted? Is it protected? So these are great questions to ask. There's many different vendors. The answers to these questions vary widely. So think about the value of yes to each of these questions as you do the total cost of ownership comparison versus price for your solution. This is one of the bullets that we touched on a little bit a little earlier, which is the concept of anomaly detection. Some services, including Infrascale, have actually built some very specific software functionality that is on the lookout for weird behavior that could be caused by ransomware. And for example, our anomaly detection is basically geared around file level activity. If a typical user on a workstation may make changes and save, say, 50 to 100 files in a typical workday, and we see that history, and then one day, all of a sudden, 1,000 files change in one day. There's something going on in that machine, and as you can see here, there is a slider that lets you set a threshold for the types of activity, and if the volume of activity exceeds the threshold that you've set, it flags the administrator, hey, something's going on in this machine. You should definitely take a look, because one of the key things for ransomware is to detect it early, and then shut it down as quickly as you can, wipe that machine, and again reset it. This basically speeds up the time to detection, which is the first step to getting healed from a ransomware attack. So this is, again, ask your backup or disaster recovery solution provider, do they provide anything like this so that you can be notified when a machine starts behaving erratically? Okay, here are 3 providers, just to kind of give you a different compare and contrast sort of thing. Datto, very popular in the small medium business space. A lot of managed service providers that I talk to use Datto appliances and the Datto Cloud to protect their SMB customers. Unitrends we tend to see in much larger environments, and again, this is an appliance-based solution. They've really got holes in the area around endpoint protection because both of those offerings are really focused on protecting servers and protecting business applications that run on those servers and databases on those servers. And so there are exposures around the endpoints, and we'll take a look a little bit after this about how Infrascale protects the entire stack, including the endpoints. This is just one brief case study that we'd like to share. Ellen McCree is a customer of ours. They were infected by ransomware, and it locked up all of their systems. It actually took down several different workstations and servers after one workstation was infected. She was able to quickly capture the fact that something had happened thanks to the anomaly detection, was able to pin down which machine had been compromised, shut down all the infected servers and workstations, wiped them out, and then lit up the disaster recovery solution up and running. So within an hour and a half, she had the entire business up and running, and within minutes, she had the business up and running, and in an hour and a half, she was able to actually wipe the physical machines, reload them with the clean versions of their data, and get everyone back up and running on their hardware and failed back. And so in 1 hour and a half, not only did she keep the business up and going without much interruption to the business, but she was able to clean the machines and restore the last version before the infection hit to all of those servers and affected workstations. It's a great win for them, and they were quite excited, as you can see, about how quick and easy it was for them to recover after that infection. And by the way, the exploit that they fell for was the one where it looked like a scan from a local printer. The user just cranked it open, and there you have it. Okay, Chris, we got another poll here.
Yeah, we do. Thanks so much, Chris. So for those of you in the audience, if you wouldn't mind taking another minute or so just to answer the following poll question, and be honest, the answers are blind, so we can't see your name or nobody else is getting your name or anything like that. So question is, can you recover a production database in 15 minutes if it gets infected with ransomware? Your answers are yes, no, or not sure. And I'll give everybody another couple seconds to answer that question here. And Chris, how often do you think you see people with the ability to get back in, to recover from something in about 15 minutes? Do you think that's quite common? Do you see often people have the ability to do that? What are your thoughts?
Well, and specifically about databases, and I think the reason that we ask this question this way is the databases are very complex. Most people have some sort of backup solution in place. And again, we talked about the time to recovery difference between backup and disaster recovery. If you do not have the ability to virtualize this database and light it up in a separate image, it's going to be a lot worse than 15 minutes. And I think that we talked before about the high percentage of people that have had at least one or more customers affected. This is the opposite. You're going to find that generally very few companies, I'd say 20 to 30% is a number that I hear most frequently. Even customers of some managed service providers take much longer than this if a production database actually gets infected with ransomware.
All right, so we got some answers here from the audience, and it seems we've got 50% of the respondents saying no. We've got 20.8% responding with yes, looking for you guys, and 29.2%, we'll just round it up to 30, we'll say saying not sure. So thank you guys for your participation in the polls. Really appreciate it. And we'll have another poll coming up at the end of the presentation today, so stay tuned for that one. But thanks so much, and here you go, Chris, back into your presentation.
Thanks, and again, the survey fell right in that range. That 20 to 30% said they could do it. In this case, 20.8 or whatever that was. So pretty typical. If you don't have a full-blown disaster recovery solution in place and you only have standard backup, you're not going to be able to recover in 15 minutes. So this is pretty interesting. Okay, so the idea that we're going to cover next, or the concept, or the content, I should say, is how you can become a ransomware hero as the IT administrator for the company, or if you happen to be a service provider or reseller, to bring an offering that will help companies do much better with this ransomware issue than they have in the past. So the first thing, are you currently selling prevention? We talked about this, and actually more than 40% of businesses have already been hit by ransomware, and that's out of all businesses. And again, we've talked about the fact that almost everyone that's here on the webinar has had at least one customer affected. Are you selling them any prevention services today? And if you're going to, there's multiple pieces to that. And there are different elements to it that almost no partners do all of, I should say. There's 4 or 5 different layers of protection. Most partners offer something, but rarely do them all. And so here's some examples of some of those things. So there are companies that you can hire that will do simulated phishing attacks on your customers. And what that means is they send them emails that are basically phishing, but the difference here is if somebody falls for it and clicks on the link, it doesn't actually infect them with ransomware. It just reports that information back to the company. There's multiple services that you can engage. It's very inexpensive, and it's a great way to test out your customers to see if they're smart enough to not do it, which leads to the next bullet, security user training. Out of all the things, we've polled many partners about are you doing all the following steps to protect your customers. This is the one that is done least, which is an actual training for all the end users of their customers about what to look for, how to avoid phishing. Most people know that there's websites that they shouldn't go to. However, they still tend to visit those websites. We won't talk about what kind of content is on those websites. But the phishing attacks, again, are getting more and more sophisticated, and that has been the point of entry for a lot of this stuff. So are you training the users at all of your customers? And again, a very small percentage of our partners that I've talked to are doing this today. Vulnerability quiz. We actually have a quiz, and we'll cover this in a second, but there's a simple 10-question quiz that you can have your customers take and understand how exposed they may be. The other thing that you need to do, obviously, is understand all the critical applications and databases for your customers. You've got to protect those not only for backup, but if you want a quick time to recovery, offer the ability to virtualize those, which leads again to time to recovery. You've got 2 different styles with the backup and DRaaS. And again, antivirus. Everybody needs antivirus, anti-malware software. Just about anybody in the IT space knows this. It's best practices. But you need to do audits. Are they current? Are they applying all their updates? Did they pick a product that is reputable and not just one to check the box? So these are all things to think about in selling ransomware prevention to your customers. So Infrascale partners, if you join our partner program, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, but all of our partners have the ability to go into our partner portal, and we have a ton of content there that is co-brandable and rebrandable that you can use to talk to your customers about ransomware. And basically, these are tools to help you sell ransomware prevention services to your customers, and really just justify why they would be willing to spend money to get a true disaster recovery solution if they want to, reduce their time to recover. So we've done a lot of this legwork. There's some great material that you can take advantage of as a partner of Infrascale to present this topic to your customers. We have developed an entire microsite. If you're interested, you can go check this out while we're on the webinar. The URL for this is ruasofttarget.com. If you go there, and this is a brief quiz, it basically just asks, how does your company behave or how does it do in these areas? At the end of it, it comes back with a score. It'll give you a risk assessment anywhere from you're doing a great job, you're protected, to, oh boy, you got some serious issues here. It also gives you some guidance about things that you need to focus on to make sure that your customer is protected or your network environment is protected. So go check this out. This is yet another great sales tool for partners to use with their customers. Sit down with the business owner, have them take the quiz right in front of you, and then talk about the results when they come back up. I guarantee you it'll lead to a pretty interesting conversation with your customer. Okay, I would like to spend a few minutes just tell you a little bit about our company. Obviously, we spend a lot of time and energy in the areas of data protection, ransomware detection and recovery. But what about us? Where do we come from? What do you want to know about us? So first of all, the mission of Infrascale is to eradicate downtime and data loss for all customers. And so, backup and disaster recovery. Make sure you've got clean backups and never lose data. Eradicate downtime, have that ability to virtualize with the disaster recovery solution, get those servers up and running. We actually offer an SLA that is a guarantee that we can virtualize any server, either locally on the appliance or in the cloud, at 15 minutes or less. This is a guarantee. We back it up in the contract. We've never missed this SLA. In fact, we track this very closely, every instance of servers being lit up in our cloud, and it happens daily, typically in testing environments, but the average has been under 2 minutes, and we have never exceeded the 15 minutes. So again, as you look at disaster recovery solutions, make sure your vendor offers some sort of a guaranteed or SLA, and make sure it's in a time frame that's short enough that your business will be unaffected by ransomware if you do get infected. We talked about data protection. Ransomware is one piece of the puzzle. Cloud backup and recovery comes into play if you lose an entire site to ransomware or other disasters. And then push-button failover really talks again to the orchestration element that we chatted about earlier, which is the ability to light up a whole series of servers in the proper sequence, run the scripts, and have an entire site come up in the cloud with the push of a single button. That's orchestration. So this slide really talks about a typical customer network environment. There's multiple layers of data, and the big thing that we're trying to point out here is that traditional backup and disaster recovery solutions are focused on the servers, and this is true in almost all SMBs, most mid-enterprises, even big companies. They do a really good job in most cases of protecting those servers, but the endpoints, those remote workers, the branch office locations that are outside the core network, and then the endpoints, which really is all the workstations, and especially, again, the mobile devices, laptops in particular, but tablets and the ubiquitous smartphones. Everybody's got an iPhone or a Droid. These are almost never protected by a traditional IT backup and disaster recovery solution. We have had two different products that we're going to talk about briefly here. We have a cloud backup product, which is a direct-to-cloud offering. Basically, the data goes directly from the device, whether it is a smartphone or tablet or workstation or server, direct from the device to one of our data centers. The disaster recovery solution, the difference there is the ability to virtualize the image and do failover of the servers or workstations either locally on an appliance or in the cloud. Between those two different offerings, you can cover all the different elements of the data stack in any customer. How do we do that? We just talked about this. So backup we just talked about, and disaster recovery, the ability to fail over. But how do we do that? We'll get to that in a minute. So forgot we slipped some of these in here. We recently were recognized by Gartner as a visionary in the disaster recovery as a service. All these companies offer some flavor of DRaaS offerings, and we have been selected as a visionary, as a company that is really pushing the boundaries of what can be done in this area and what can be delivered at the price point. So check this out. They've got a really nice white paper around the Magic Quadrant, and you can take a look at us versus some other vendors. Okay, so back to how we do this. So the first thing that we can do is protect all the devices in your network environment. Starting at the bottom, both physical and virtual servers. So it can be, again, Windows or Unix running on a server, or it can be a virtualized environment, Hyper-V VMware, all the different mobile devices, tablets, smartphones, and your workstations, both the desktops and laptops. And the way that we do that really is a very comprehensive ability to talk to just about any operating system. So Hyper-V or VMware, Unix, Linux, AIX, Windows, Mac OS on workstations, and iOS and Droid for your smartphones. We can talk to all of those operating systems. We have agent software that can engage with them and back up data off of any of those devices. We've also got a granular recovery and support for SQL Server and Microsoft Exchange, so down to the mailbox or message level or down to the record level inside of a database. So if you've got just a small amount of corruption or a very small specific amount of data to be restored, you can take advantage of those tools for Exchange and SQL Server. Now, one of the other things that's really interesting about our offering is its flexibility. Starting at the bottom, for the disaster recovery solution, you'll have an appliance, and this can either be a physical device that's right there in the data center or on the network around your servers, or it can be a virtual appliance where it is our software running inside of a Hyper-V or VMware environment. What the appliance does is take care of all of the local captures of the backup as well as local failover of those images. So if you have a ransomware infection or some other sort of disaster like a hard drive go down, you can light up that image locally and run it and take its place in the network. Now the next piece is the ability to point that data stream when you send data off-site, which is a best practice. You can send it to any cloud. And by that, you can send it to the Infrascale cloud. And we have 15 data centers around the world. They're all SSAE 16 compliant. And you can have them selected to whatever your local one is to get the highest performance. You can send it to a private cloud. We have many managed service provider partners of them stood up their own data center, and they offsite all of their customers' data into their own data center. Or we have large enterprise customers, again, that have set up second and third sites, and they send that data site to site. So they've got it offsite on their own private cloud. And then the third one, and this is one that is an area of huge growth right now, is people who want to take advantage of public clouds like Amazon, Azure, or Google Cloud. We can also offsite data to any of those clouds. And so whatever style of cloud offsite data storage that you would like to use or offer to your customers, it can be done with our solution. So that flexibility allows us to play in a lot of different environments. I mentioned earlier that we've got a very strong story around the data centers with the SSAE 16 compliance and audits that are done, but it actually rings true across a lot of different kinds of compliance and certification. We have about 50,000 customers worldwide, and 15% of them are in the healthcare industry, so HIPAA, obviously a huge concern for these guys. Infrascale backup and disaster recovery can be part of a complete HIPAA-compliant environment for your customers. We're happy to sign the BAA letter for any of the customers that require it. A couple other things you can see here. I'd like to point out CJIS. CJIS is interesting because CJIS stands for the Criminal Justice Information System, and these are guidelines that were put forth by the FBI for law enforcement and where they can send data off-site. This has been a real challenge for most small police departments, sheriff's offices, campus police forces. They've had no way to offsite their data because there is no offering in the market that allows them to send their data to a CJIS compliant data center. Until now. We have partnered with a company called CJIS Solutions, and they have a CJIS compliant data center in New Jersey. In fact, the owner of that business is an active police chief in New Jersey. He knows the business inside out. And so we now have a booming business in the area of law enforcement where people can back their data locally with one of our appliances and then offsite it to that CJIS compliant data center. And it's completely CJIS compliant because the data is encrypted in flight and at rest once it gets there. So if any of your customers or prospects are in this space, you now have an offering to get data backed up and off-site in a CJIS compliant environment. So global coverage, we mentioned earlier, we've got about 50,000 customers worldwide. You can see we're primarily in North America. The business is really starting to take off in Europe as well, but we have some presence on all of the continents except for Antarctica. And we have data centers in most of these geographies, and most of our customers don't want their data to leave their country. And so we are constantly standing up new locations. But as you can see here, each dot on this map represents a business that we protect. We have close to 1,000 partners now worldwide. We sell our service exclusively through our network of managed service providers, IT consultants, and resellers. So we will never compete with our partners for their business. In fact, we do a lot of marketing to drive leads and demand generation so that we can feed customers and opportunities to our partners. And we've now across the mark where we have over 1 million devices protected worldwide. So we've been at this for a while. We've got a pretty big global footprint. One of the things that I just mentioned in relation to CJIS is true of actually all of our customers. We actually encrypt the data in flight, meaning over the network when it's going between a site and a data center in the cloud. And we also encrypt the data when it's at rest in the data center, which is a requirement for many of those compliance things that we just looked at. We also have the ability for the ultra-paranoid to have a user key that is held only by the customer or the partner, and only they can see the data so that no one anywhere else, including Infrascale support guys or the partner, can actually see the data. If they ever lose that key, of course, they've got a serious challenge because we can't help them. But we've got a very small percentage of our customers that take it to that degree and encrypt it with their own key. But all customers have encrypted data in flight and at rest in the cloud. So, Chris, we got another poll here.
Yeah, we do. We have a poll question here as we close out the presentation today. So just a couple of reminders. The poll question, would you like to learn more about Infrascale's backup and disaster recovery solutions? Yes, I'd like to learn more. Not yet, but maybe later. So feel free to respond to that poll question. I'll let everybody sit on that for a second. Okay, so couple things really briefly before we close out the presentation today. We have a Q&A coming up. If you haven't entered your question yet, please enter it now, so that way we can try to get to as many of the questions as we can before the presentation is over today. Also, don't forget, if you're chosen for the winner of the prize, the people from Infrascale will get back in touch with you once the webcast is over, so that way they can arrange everything with you guys, so that way you can get your prize if you happen to win it. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll keep this poll up here for another couple seconds, and then we'll get the next step slide out there, and we'll keep that up while we start the Q&A. Okay, so what I will do is this. So right now, I'll ask you in the audience, keep answering this poll question. In the meantime, I will ask you a question here from the audience, Chris. So we'll start the Q&A. Let's see what we got here. So question from the audience. Daniel's asking, which antivirus solutions would you recommend to fight against ransomware or detect it even? Do you have any advice?
There's a bunch of different ones out there, honestly, and I think the key thing is just to look at reputable names. And none of them are 100% protection, but the big names that you're probably familiar with, AVG does a nice job, has a good suite of them, McAfee, and there are several others as well, but I think the key is to make sure that they've got all of those different things that we talked about, antivirus, anti-malware, that there are frequent updates, and that the users are applying those updates. That's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, that's very true. It depends a lot on the users that are using it. That's definitely true. We have a question here. So it's from Gabriel. It's a multi-part question, so I'll try to ask it very slowly, and if you need me to repeat anything, please ask. So he says, since you are doing the cloud, what's your security model? Do you comply to any PCI compliance? And who in your company can see the data? Can you access everything or just the logs? And what is the retention time of data? So we'll answer the first two questions first. Since you're doing cloud, what's your security model, and do you comply to any PCI compliance?
Okay, so the first thing is all the data centers are audited annually and receive the SSAE 16 compliance. So that's the first thing. The second thing is access to the data is restricted to a very small number of people in our company. And typically there's no need for us to ever go in and access data directly. They can see the logs, but we've got a very few people, and they've got very specific roles that are allowed to see that data. On the compliance side, we are PCIe compliant. We mentioned also HIPAA compliant, SOX, FINRA, CGIS. So pretty much the answer has been yes. I'll give you an example. One that happened recently. We have a partner that's based in Nevada, sells to casinos. He wanted to know, is your data center and solution compliant with the Nevada Gaming Commission's rules around the offsiting of data? And we went through the 19 points, and it turned out that we were actually compliant with them as well. And that typically is the answer that we find. So if you, as a partner or customer, have any specific flavor of security compliance or those sorts of things, we'd be happy to investigate that and come back to you with the results about whether we meet those requirements or not. So I think that answers the first part of the question.
Thanks for doing that. And let's see here. We've got a question here from an audience member. It's coming from Rob, and he's asking, how long does it take to learn good or normal behavior versus, let's say, suspicious behavior? Do you have any thoughts on that, how long it might take to learn or teach people normal behavior versus suspicious behavior?
So it depends on what you're using to monitor and try to detect that sort of behavior. So so the anomaly detection that we built into our backup offering is basically going to capture that behavior at the time of a new backup. So that it really depends on the schedule that you set for your backups. Do you back up every 5 minutes? Do you back up every 15 minutes? And again, one of the tricky bits about ransomware is it doesn't necessarily get on the machine and immediately lock it up. Now frequently it runs in the background very quietly and goes out exploring the network and those sorts of things. And so as a user, you may not realize that you've been infected for quite a while. We would detect that anomalous behavior at the next backup after the infection hit, and that would flag one of your admins and, hey, something's up, go check this out. So it's dependent on, in our case, the frequency of the backups of the infected device that was the point of entry. There are other approaches and other offerings for that, but that's how ours works. I don't know if that answered the question completely or not.
No, I think that's great. Thanks so much. We've got a question here. Excuse me. Another audience member, they're saying, I'm interested in a partnership, but I'm just flat horrible at sales and marketing. Is there anything Infrascale can do to help me on that side of things? Do you help with that?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And again, I've been working with channel partners for more decades than I care to admit. And one of the challenges that most resellers and MSPs have is sales and marketing. Because we are 100% channel focused, everything we do is designed to make our partners successful. And so by that we mean, in addition to providing tools and resources in the partner portal, like we showed earlier, the content that's geared specifically around ransomware. There's a lot of other things there that are helpful for you to position the offering to your customers, and they're all co-brandable and rebrandable. There are vertical industry case studies. For example, we've got a case study about one of our CGIS compliant customers. It's about one of the police forces. We have other ones about healthcare. So whatever vertical you'd like to go into, there's some nice tools, white papers, case studies, and those things, slide decks even that are pre-built. In addition, we have a dedicated partner marketing group that run events with our partners, and we're constantly doing lunch and learns and webinars and postcard mailers and those sorts of things with all of our partners to help them. We can help them not only with the content, but with some best practices and some advice about what kinds of campaigns to run. And finally, we've got a traditional MDF program where we can actually subsidize your costs for some of these marketing campaigns. It's a really simple one-page proposal. We review those every week and are frequently paying for half of the marketing costs for these campaigns for our partners. And then the last thing that we do is we spend a lot of money ourselves on driving demand and lead generation of end users, and 100% of those opportunities that we uncover are then passed out to our partners as opportunities to go sell.
Okay, we've got a question here. Michael is asking, how many users does Infrascale have?
Well, we've got over 50,000 customers, a customer being a business. But if you're thinking users, I would look at devices. We're over 1 million devices, so that's probably a more representative count of individual people that are protected. That would be servers as well as workstations, smartphones, and tablets. So over 50,000 customers worldwide, over 1 million devices.
Question here, person's asking, I have my own data center infrastructure. Can I still work with Infrascale?
Yes, you can, and that's the private cloud version of the offsiting that we talked about. So the way that works is you load an instance of our software in your data center, and then you can offsite the data from all of your customers to your own data center. We have a lot of managed service provider partners that do it this way, and it gives them more control over the cost and the margins for their overall service, and it gives them, again, a local copy basically of all of their customer data right there in their own data center. So quite popular in the MSP world is offsiting to your own data center.
Don't forget, for everybody in the audience, if you see the slide there on your screen, if you're interested in a 60-day free trial, you can test it for yourself. Just type 60 days free into the Ask a Question box, and we'll make sure to get that information out to the people at Infrascale so they can follow up with you. Okay, we got a question here. Let's see. Who would you recommend as a cost-efficient and successful DRaaS solution for an IT consulting company?
Well, I would take a good hard look at Infrascale. What a fabulous offering. There's actually quite a few companies that do play in the space, and really what you want to do is I would go back to the slides that have the questions that are, as you evaluate any offering, does it do these things? Is there an SLA for failover? Is there unlimited versioning? Do you have the ability on a per device or per job basis to set the schedule and have QoS control for the amount of data that's flowing off site? And make sure you can answer yes to all those questions. Can it protect all these different operating systems? Can it protect servers and end devices? So I would say that as you look at any solution for this, you want to use those points to evaluate them, and then you're basically looking at value for cost kind of thing. But I would definitely recommend you take a look at Infrascale. I'm kind of partial to it personally.
That's an excellent suggestion. We've got time for like 1 or 2 more questions, so I'll try to squeeze them in. Person's asking, I have a 100 terabyte opportunity as a partner. Can Infrascale help me get it, win it?
Absolutely. So two things there. First of all, the solution scales very well into large environments. While we have a very large base of MSPs that service SMB customers, which are frequently under 1 terabyte each, we have many large customers that are in the tens or even 100 plus terabytes. Our largest appliances that can go on site go up to 168 terabytes, and so you can protect some pretty large environments with those and get the same speed to recovery and ability to fail over as a small customer. The second part to the answer is we have a field sales team and an inside sales team that are basically there to support and help our partners sell. So if you have a large and exciting 100 terabyte opportunity, we'd be very happy to engage with you and help you go win that business. Okay.
One more question before we announce the winner of the prize for today's webcast. This question is asking, anomaly detection sounds great, but doesn't every vendor out there offer this already?
No, actually, it's not typical in the backup and disaster recovery space. Like typically, there's anti-intrusion and other data security products that have been focused around this, but having it baked into a disaster recovery as a service offering is fairly unique in the industry. I suspect that more and more vendors will start to go in this direction and do this sort of thing, but many of the backup and DR offerings that are out there today do not have anything in this area.
All right. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your presentation today. And I think at this time we'll announce that the winner of one of the 3 prizes mentioned earlier in the webcast is Michael Folib. Or excuse me, Michael Foib. So, Michael, if you, congratulations. We will contact you at the end of the webcast so that way you can claim your prize. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to email me. My email is on the front of the screen there, and I can help you out. So congratulations, Michael. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending today's webcast sponsored by Infrascale and brought to you by our rcpmag.com, Redmond channel partner. Thank you all for tuning in. We hope you have a great rest of your day and a great holiday season. Thanks for sticking with us for the entire hour. You guys are all great. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.